Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Gurave Gaura Chandraya Radhikaya Tadalaya Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namaha. Vandeham Shri Guruvaram Shri Rupanuga Pravaram Vrajara Satasikam Cha Narayanam Tam Kripanam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Namo Gauratishe Namaha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Shri Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhani Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriya. Aho Bhagyam Nanda Gopa Vrajokasam Yanmitram Paramanandam Purnam Brahma Sanatanam. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai Shri Gurudeva Ki Jai, Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai, Guru Parampara Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Manju Ki Jai, Nitai Gopranande Hare. Chinta, you can sit on this over here. No problem. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you for coming. It's always nice to see more and more devotees. That's our aspiration here, is to host devotees for Kirtan and festivals. We're going to start as soon as this building is complete, which is going to be very soon. Then we'll start being able to host much more, and we'll start like a weekly Kirtan, like a Saturday Kirtan day, and in general we'll have more events. So that's really our hope. And we're still working on these houses. So once those houses are fixed up, for summertime it's been great. We hosted like 80, 90 people multiple times. But winter, they're not really winterized, so that's another little hill to climb. But once that's done, then we'll be able to host more as well. So if we do like a weekend retreat or something like that, devotees can always stay overnight. But it's nice. We had a nice Sunday here for mid-December. And we're approaching Gita Jayanti, Tuesday, and Ekadashi. So I thought we could have a little meditation on some of the messages of Krishna's Bhagavad Gita and pray to him, pray to be connected. Bhagavad Gita, where to start, right? Srila Prabhupada writes such a beautiful introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. It's pretty much like the whole philosophy in such a profound, beautiful package that's, you could say, digestible for an audience at any time, really. And it's not too long to be bewildered, and sometimes people get like, oh, there's this book, there's that book, what am I supposed to read? Christianity, I get the Bible, I'm okay. But with Vaishnavism, there's dozens of books, Bhagavatam, CC already, how many volumes? The nice thing about the Bhagavad Gita is it's very compact, relatively speaking, compared to many scriptures. The purports make it more elaborate, but you can also just read the verses and develop a deep connection and some meditative experience, and you can meditate on it and start to realize many more facets. But that's not the scope of this talk, to go through every verse, every chapter. I was thinking maybe a summary, but that's also, it can be a bit dry, because if you try to summarize everything in a half hour, you can just kind of touch on the basic subject matter, but you can't really get into a mood. So I was thinking, just when we're doing Kirtan, I was like, okay, what to talk about? I was thinking about this message of, some of the core themes that Krishna is telling to Arjuna, and how that can hopefully help impact our lives and help us, inspire us, direct us, give us hope. So I thought I would kind of touch on those things. And I was thinking of this mood of like courageous performance of one's duty is one side, but what is our ultimate duty, and understanding that as well. And the ultimate duty of man or human beings, or the soul on a deeper level, and that is devotion, dedication, and understanding of my relation with God and service and my highest prospect. And so how can we enter into that? And then also going further, understanding the distinction between duty and love, and the higher power of love and how it incorporates responsibility. Duty, we think, okay, I have a duty, so I should follow that duty. But what's the motivation behind it? The great thing about relationship with Krishna is that naturally, you will serve if you love. That's the principle of Bhakti Yoga. If you don't love, then service can be like, okay, it's a sense of duty. We do service, and then we can do it for many reasons. Many religions, they have some conception around service to God or worship. But a lot of times it's a transactional. God, I will worship you, but, remove my sins and give me prosperity. And this isn't pure bhakti. And so the beauty of bhakti is that when you have a real loving relationship with God, ultimately, like Srila Prabhupada would say, everything is his, and if you love him and serve him, everything is yours. Someone was saying, Prabhupada, how do I renounce? He said, what is yours to renounce? Everything is Krishna's. Nothing is ours. At best, if we are granted a very high position, we can be stewards. We can be guardians, and we can be caretakers of Krishna's creation, his property. But we can never assume power and control and authority. That is the sentiment of a demon. Ishvaro hamaham bhogi siddhoham balavan sukhi. This is the 16th chapter of the Gita, the symptom of a demon. I am God, meaning I am the controller, Ishvara. People think Ishvaroham means I am God, but really means Ishvara means a controller. That's why Bhagavatam, Ishvara Parama Krishna, the controller of all controllers is Krishna. That's the meaning of Ishvara. Bhagavan means God who has all opulences. Ishvara means the controller. So God is the controller. We are simply Das and Das and Das. Servant of the highest. Why serve something low when you can be a servant of the highest? That is service to God. And understanding that ontologically, at the base, at the root level of who we are, our self-identity, truly, and our nature in that is one of service, of action, of kriya. As prakriti, Krishna says in the Gita, who am I? Who is the soul? Apariyam itastamyam prakritim vidime param. You are my higher prakriti. So what does it mean to be prakriti? Prakriti means to be of service to the higher principle, to God. That is the nature of the self, prakriti. And we're not material. That's the lesson, first lesson in the Gita. We're not material. Bhumera lo vayu. That's the lower prakriti, the lower nature. We are of the higher nature. So therefore we should learn to identify with the higher nature. There are certain kinds of dharmas that apply to the lower nature, the material nature. And there are certain dharmas and duties that apply to the higher nature. So what we are trying to do is to learn to identify with our higher nature and to live within that higher nature. Then we can be liberated, even in this body. Ihayasya harirdasya karmana manasagira. Jivan mukta sa uchyate. Someone, you can be liberated even in this very body. Like an iron becomes one with the fire in quality. Similarly, you can become liberated even while living, jivan mukta, if you apply this philosophy purely. All of your activities, all of your endeavors, all of your heart and soul offer to God and try to serve Him under guidance of His devotees, His messengers. Then you are considered jivan mukt. And Krishna says, Ata urdvang na sangsaya. Have no doubt, I will deliver you. 12th chapter, 2nd verse. Maya veshamanoye mam nitya yukta upashte shraddhavan paryo. Ta urdvam na sangsaya. Have no doubt, I will deliver you. If you remember me with love, if you take shelter of me, develop relation with me, and have no fear, no doubt. So that's why our Gurudev would always say, never be hopeless. It was one of his refrains. Never be hopeless. On one side, we should lament our lack of, you could say, if we've really achieved pure devotion, the state of bhav and prem, then there's nothing to regret or lament. But if we haven't, then we should still pray for advancement. We should still strive for advancement. But that doesn't mean we should be hopeless. Oh, I'm fallen. That's fine. But I'm fallen at the feet of Krishna. That is grace. There's nothing wrong with being fallen. So many stories are there in our scripture of people who you could say, objectively speaking, to certain degrees, were quite fallen, materially speaking. But because of their devotion to Krishna, Krishna says in the Gita, Api chet sudura charo. Even if you're the most wicked, even if you've done the most wicked deeds, but bhajate mama nanyabhak, you surrender to me, you worship me, you should be considered a sadhu. Sadhur eva samantavya. People debate this for thousands of years, but Krishna therefore boldly said it. People debate this. How is it possible? Someone who does bad things, fallen, they can be considered a great saintly person, sadhu. Krishna therefore says, Arjuna, you declare this. Kunteya pratijaniya name bhakta pranasyati. My devotee is never destroyed, is never lost. Krishna says, I am declaring this, but you, Arjuna, also. You must declare this. And proclaim it loudly and widely. The devotee shall never perish. So therefore I want to talk on this theme of how to develop this sense of fearlessness and courageousness in the performance of one's loving service, or one's taking up one's responsibility. This is ultimately our message. People say, what is the message of the Gita? Oh, do your duty. Karmanyeva adhikaraste ma phaleshu karachana. In India we hear this many times. But karmanya eva adhikaras. For Krishna, that is our adhikar. We can work otherwise, but it's yajantya avidi purvakam. It's not proper, so you're not going to get the best result. Do it for me, water the root of the tree, then the whole tree of creation will be satisfied. So focus on Krishna. So when the Gita starts, everyone knows, how does the Gita start? Not the verse, but there's a dilemma. Problem, setup, problem, resolution. That's the basic narrative structure of story. Setup, problem, solution. So what's the setup to the Gita? Setup to the Gita is the battlefield. And many commentators talk about the Gita in metaphorical terms. And our acharyas, Srila Prabhupada, our Gurudev, actually, they said, while you can take the lessons in your own life as, you could say, it's not allegory, but you can take lessons from truth, truthful history, you could say, and incorporate that. Metaphorically, you could say, but don't think it's myth. Don't think it's mythical. Krishna's historical personality. So that's there. But the setup is, see, Arjuna, now this is an interesting thing about, we could talk about fear and what people are afraid of and have been afraid of, and you look at from childhood. What are people afraid of? Their parents tell them, don't touch a fire, you'll get burnt. And sometimes they touch a fire, or don't put a fork in the outlet. And so parents, they teach children fear, and it helps them survive. It's a survival mechanism. Fight or flight, right? And so without any kind of fear, you can become too reckless, and you can kill yourself, destroy yourself, or allow yourself to fall into great harm. So that's why, but then there's another kind of fear. There's fear of, what is it? What do children fear? Dogs? The dark. Spiders. There's so many phobias nowadays, right? Who can list some phobias? Agoraphobia. Huh? Clowns is a big one. What is it about clowns? Stephen King's fault?
Horror films, like different impressions.
There's so many things we're afraid of. Monster under the bed or in the closet. Right? Everyone ever watched Monsters, Inc.? I think I watched it when I was kid, before I went to India. The point is, the monsters were afraid of the children. That was the whole twist on the story. The genius of the story was that the monsters were terrified of the children, but it was their job to try to scare the children.
Did they put them under the bed?
No, they would have portals into their realm. It was quite genius. Was that, Brent?
You said the closet.
The closet.
Yeah.
I think it opens with this, someone's being trained how to scare the kids, and he just wigs out and basically can't have the job. So it was early rookie mistake. So the point is, we all fear different things, but Krishna, he encouraged Arjuna. Now Arjuna, he wasn't afraid of ordinary things because he was a great Kshatriya. Kshatriyas, the nature of a Kshatriya is that they're basically fearless. Meaning, what most people fear, they don't fear. They're not afraid of dying. They'll fight in battle, and it's a human kind of, they say there's the 2%. Have anyone heard about that? The 2% means 2% of people have this kind of warrior gene where they can, Srila Prabhupada would say, the draft system is foolish because, they're taking people who should be a Brahmin or Vaishya or Shudra and they're making them fight. You should identify people who have qualities that you can actually be a warrior, right? This kind of warrior quality. So Arjuna was a real Kshatriya. He wasn't afraid of anything. But why was he in dilemma? What was the dilemma, the setup? It was kind of it had built up to such a degree that it was he couldn't handle it. Here he was in the middle of a battlefield with his entire dynasty about to enter into a fratricidal conflict that would destroy not only their lives but destroy society. That was his major dilemma in the first chapter in the setup. Arjuna was saying, not only is this gonna, because he understands as a Kshatriya in a dharmic battle, you go to heaven if you die in war. That's one of the things they do to warriors to help them, Don't worry, you'll go to war, you'll go to heaven. But what about all the families? What about all the orphan children, the widows? It's going to develop Varna Shankara, unwanted progeny, and, sin. So he had all these things. And in his mind, it was adharmic to fight. His gurus were there, his teachers were there, his cousins were there. So the setup, Krishna is basically showing an extreme and teaching from that situation so that we know it'll obviously, a lot of things in our life aren't going to be that extreme. So Krishna is showing that this philosophy applies in all conditions, even the most difficult and the most perplexing. You should apply this philosophy, and it can help you the most in those times. And so that's just one point. Arjuna wasn't afraid for his life, but he was afraid of doing, the wrong thing, and of, he said, even if I win, how am I going to enjoy this kingdom tainted by blood? The blood of my elders. It's a very strange thing. So that's there, and that's, you could have long discussion on that point, but I kind of want to move along. Meaning, each of us isn't in the middle of a fratricidal war, conflict. So we don't have to apply the Gita only in that kind of scenario, right? But what does Krishna start with? What are his first words to Arjuna? Second chapter. There's 2 verses that he gives that are very important.
This doesn't suit you?
Yeah, first he says, Kutashtva kashmalamidam. Where has this filthy mentality come from? That's why in Russia they tried to ban the Gita, because they said it advocated like a kind of militancy, like a theistic, fanatic, militancy. But it's a biased outlook. Krishna is telling Arjuna, Kutastva kashmalamidam vishame samupasitam anarya justam ashvargyam. Your mentality is leading you to infamy and to asvargam, not going up but going down. It says, Klaibyang mas magama partha naitat vayupapadite shudram hridaya dobhalyam takta utishta Paranthapa. It's very interesting because in the beginning Krishna says, give up this petty weakness of heart and arise, Paranthapa, O chastiser of the enemy. He said, why have you become impotent? So he was chastising him because, it's kind of like trying to rile him up into battle. But the point was that Arjuna needed to develop like a higher transcendental conception, you could say. Like I was saying, there's a dharma according to material nature, there's a dharma according to spiritual nature. So Krishna's trying to rise him up to a higher conception of dharma. On the material plane, if you do some of that kind of things he was describing, that's adharmic. But on the spiritual plane, if you're dedicated to the service of God, then you follow his will fearlessly. People in the temple life in India, there's a lot of people, they argue over another verse. It's very challenging for most people to understand. Krishna says, Man nimitam kritam papam api dharmaya kalpate. And people argue over this a lot. Man nimitam, for me, kritam papam, if you do something considered pap, api dharmaya kalpate, that is dharma. It's very hard to understand. What does it mean to be like loyal or dedicated to the service of God? What he's saying is that according to social consideration, don't act according to social pressure. What they tell you is right. If you're surrendered to me and you act for me and connected to me, then you will simply follow me without doubt. What's an example in the Mahabharata? Krishna told Arjuna, blow the conch shell and say Ashwatama hataha. Who knows that story? Anyone heard that story? Yudhisthira. Ashwatama is dead. And he was afraid. This will be a pap. It's untruth. He didn't want to say it. And so he said, Ashwatama hati. The elephant Ashwatama is dead. He sent Bhima. There was an elephant called Ashwatama. He killed him. But not the real Ashwatama. But anyhow, the point was that Krishna asked him to do something and he questioned, he doubted. Is this dharmic or adharmic? So God knows everything. What do we know? Our duty is honest service to God. Right? That's what we're trying to talk about. How to develop this mood of fearless grace and honest service to God. And how to develop that, first we have to develop faith and relationship. That's why I think part of the overall theme of the Gita is the development of faith. That's why so much the Gita, Krishna talks about his nature, his position. We were hearing today from Gopanandini, usually, Krishna he's not like a braggart. He didn't brag and brunch, but in Bhagavad Gita, chapter after chapter, he's talking about his divine qualities. In essence, to give Krishna a sense of to give Arjuna a sense of his real position. Krishna's not some kind of ordinary being. What does Krishna teach in 7th chapter? Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvata tyaktva deha punar janma naiti mam iti swarjuna. That person who understands my activities and my birth as transcendental, divine, divyam, they also will become divine. Upon giving up this mortal body, they will achieve a transcendental body like my own. That's Krishna's promise. So in essence, Krishna is trying to get us all to level up. That's like the message of the Gita. Our Gurudev would say, when you're faced with problems in this world, how are you going to solve them? We're all in the business. What is business means problem solving. Any products you find in the market, usually it's some kind of problem solving. Narrative fiction, problem solving. The better you are at a problem solving like career, meaning like the more niche, the more specialist you can be at problem solving, the more wealthy you'll be. So Krishna is teaching us problem solving. But what he's teaching us is level up. Because material problems come like waves. And one problem, you can solve it, but then there's going to be 1,000 more coming down on you. So in essence, if you learn to fly, you don't have the problems of walking in terrain. You don't have a problem of, how am I going to cross over a bridge? I don't need a bridge if there's a river. I don't need to, a Grand Canyon. Learn how to fly. Krishna is teaching us how to fly. Meaning, elevate your consciousness and elevate your relation, your internal connection. And then you'll become like the lotus leaf, the lotus flower. Roots are in the soil, in the mud. The lotus is untouched. So this is 11th chapter. Krishna talks about this. Different places he talks about this. Try to become like, that's what the sadhu's quality is. Krishna spends so much time talking about his nature, but also about the nature of a saintly person. 12th chapter, 8-10 verses, all about the qualities of a saintly person. 16th chapter, beginning, all about the qualities of a divine devotee, you could say. Deva, and versus a Daitya. So the point is that Krishna says in the Gita, Dhaiviyesha gunamayi mama maya dhratya mam evaye prapatyante mayam etam dharantite. How do we achieve that divine quality? Now we're in the modes, right? Various levels of in the modes of Raja, Sattva, Tama. But Krishna says, rise above that. Traigunya Vishaya Veda Nistraigunya Bhavarjuna. According to Traigunya Vishaya Veda, why are you going to fight this war? Better to give it up. But according to Nirgun Tattva, Nirgun Bhakti, follow Krishna's desire, his will. Follow Bhakti. So therefore, he said, the only way to rise up over Maya, right? When we're stuck in the modes, how do we rise up over Maya? Take shelter of Krishna in his higher energy. His higher energy, then Gurudev would say, when you rise up, the waves can no longer touch you. You don't even have to rise that high. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. How do we do that? So then the process is given. There's many processes given. 4th chapter, one of the fundamental teachings is given. 434, we all learned this in Gurukul, 20 years ago. Tad vidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevi upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. Krishna says, if you want to come to me, you have to come through someone who knows me. You don't know me well enough to understand me even. So how are you going to come to me? Approach someone who knows me. That is pure Guru. And how do you approach pure Guru? Find someone who knows Guru. Then they'll take you to Guru. So it's a process. But find the devotees. The devotees are real teachers. Krishna says, Jagatam Guruvo Bhakta Bhaktanam Guruvo Vayam. The devotees are gurus of the world and I am their guru. So this is how we approach Krishna. Then after you do that, it says inquire, serve, pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. Offer respect, obeisance, namaha. When we say namaha, what does it mean? Giving up of our ahankar, our false ego. Deference. Very important. There's a kind of a Socratic dialectic, and that's useful in some places, but the Vedic method is Upanishad. Sit before the feet of the master and humbly inquire and receive transcendental knowledge. This is our process. So therefore we see even in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna doesn't tell Arjuna anything. Until Arjuna surrenders. 2.7. Karpanya dosho pata svabhava prishamitam dharma samudacheta yat shreyasha nishitam bruhitam me shishyaste sadhyam tang prapanam. Now I am bewildered. I do not know what is right or wrong. Therefore, I am offering pranam to you. I am your disciple. And a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. Then Krishna begins. So this is an important understanding and stage. Without respect, that's why, Sakyam in Navada Bhakti, it's not the first limb. Who knows the 9 limbs of Bhakti, right? Hearing, chanting, remembering, offering service, worship, archan, all these things. Then Sakyam, friendship. If you don't have any respect, how are you going to be a friend? Arjuna and Krishna were very friendly with each other, but Arjuna is still perplexed. They were bosom friends. They would sleep on the same bed, Krishna's feet at Krishna's head, Arjuna's feet, Arjuna's head, Krishna's feet. They would eat off the same plate. But when Arjuna saw the universal form, what developed in his heart? Fear of God. That's why I said before the class, fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. When we're a baby, we fear Maya. When we're an adult, we fear God. Then after that, then we can progress towards, when we have respect, meaning, what is that fear? That fear is consequences for acting in a way that goes against our real dharma, our real nature. Hingsa, violence, misuse of our independence, causing harm to others. There has to be a reaction. Otherwise the nature of the universe won't, the universe is much bigger than us and it was there much before us. So it's not going to change its rules to suit our whims. So therefore karma is a law. And you shall bear responsibility for your action. Therefore, it's good to be fearful because it protects you from causing harm to yourself, right? And Arjuna sees the universal form of Krishna and his mind is blown. And he says, "Oh Krishna, I was acting with you so casually. And yet you are God. What was I doing?" But Krishna was very merciful to him. Krishna says, and this is a message for us from God, conversation. There was an author who wrote Conversations with God, and he was like a homeless guy. And he wrote like 8 volumes, became like a wild bestseller. So we don't have to go to a fictional conversation with God or whether it was legitimate or not. The point is we have a conversation with God, Bhagavad Gita. And so Krishna says, not just to Arjuna is his conduit to share the message with everyone. So Krishna is giving us all of us this lesson across time. Krishna told Arjuna in the 4th chapter, I told this to the sun god millions and millions and millions of years previously. So this is a message that goes across time. It's an eternal message beyond time, place, and circumstance for all time. And Krishna says, do not worry because you are my dear friend. So even though you may be naughty, even though you may do wrong, know that I love you and you are my dear friend. And so when we understand that, then fear gradually can come towards friendship, relationship. But it's useful. Guru is the chastiser. Guru Karnadharam. That's one of the verses in describing Guru. Hard as a thunderbolt, soft as a rose. If he's not hard as a thunderbolt, if he's only soft and sweet, then we'll never progress. In Indian diet, first you take neem or Karela, bitter melon. Then you take the sweets. First the bitter. So spiritual life, they say bitter in the beginning, sweet in the end. In material life, sweet for a moment, bitter throughout. So how do we achieve that ultimate good? Then we have to go through the process of sadhana. So Krishna says in the Gita, the process of sadhana. But it's a very important thing. We ultimately, the topic is going beyond fear. But they do say that fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. So to become fearless, first we have to incorporate, you could say, a fear of impropriety. fear of sinful, fear of giving in to our sinful tendencies, our impulses. But Krishna is also very merciful. He says, if you chant my names once, all sins are completely extinguished. Like a mountain. Before it's like a huge mountain, but then it's only a mountain of cotton. Light the match, poof. How long does it take to, a dry mountain of cotton balls? Without ghee, it burns very quick. If you have a ghee wick that's not just a wick, how long does it take to burn? So sins are like that. It's all going to be wiped away. But what's the seventh Namaparad? Seventh offense to Krishna's names is committing sin on the strength of chanting. Therefore having some proper, respect, basically. So therefore we need to learn to respect Krishna or Guru or the temple before we can develop intimacy. Now the great thing is that once you really develop that Sambandha, respect and faith is kind of letting you enter into real Sambandha, relationship. And when you develop that real relationship based on faith and honor, then ultimately those things become innate, inherent, and you don't need to necessarily conceptualize them almost. Like when you love Krishna and you love everyone, then you're not going to commit sinful activity. You're not going to kill a cow. You're not going to murder. You're not going to, commit adultery, all the sins or whatever they may be. That's the idea of fearless grace in honest service to God. If you're not honestly serving, then you're not going to be fearless. Because fear comes, on a higher stage when you're afraid that someone will find out what you did is wrong, something wrong, fear of the government. A lot of the common law principles, I don't know who's read Crime and Punishment, Dostoevsky. Anyone read Crime and Punishment? He killed someone thinking he could get away with it, thinking he was doing right. It was a really horrible person. And they were like a bookkeeper or something. He stole it. And he thought, if I kill him, it's like doing good to society and I'll use this for doing charity and whatnot. But he couldn't deal with the burden of guilt and fear from doing wrong. And so that's one of our lessons in the Gitas. If you, our Vaishnav in Vrindavan will always say, if you'd ever do anything wrong, you have nothing to fear. So, okay, maybe in our lives we've done wrong, but now we can take shelter of Krishna, we can chant, and all that's wiped away. But now going forward, we should continue like that. One time our Gurudev was in England. I think it was the Manor. Anyway, he was giving a talk, and a lady stood up. Why, don't you know Jesus died for our sins? Why are you talking about this? And Gurudev, one-liner, was a great one-liner. And why are you still sinning? Like, you don't take his sacrifice, you don't respect his sacrifice, you're just going to make him come back and wipe away your sins. So if we want to have honest, if we want to be fearless, then we should perform honest service without duplicity. Kapata hoile dur, pravesher premirapur. It's one of our Bengali sayings. When hypocrisy or duplicity goes far away, then you enter into the realm of prema. Therefore it said, Krishna is Patita Pavan, deliverer of the fallen, but not Kapati Pavan, not deliverer of the deceitful. So this is one of our, you could say our messages in the Gita. How to take shelter of Sri Krishna, free of duplicity. It's Krishna says this in the Gita, Mitya Chara Suchate. One is called a hypocrite, who is externally renouncing object to the senses, while secretly always engaging in those kinds of things, So ultimately, Krishna is instructing us to live a life of righteousness, while also tolerating, others' faults, because we are all frail, mortal human beings with vice and weakness. But, if we want to come into a state of grace and be fearless, then Krishna gives us all that encouragement. The Bhagavad Gita is full of encouragement. And, ultimately, in reality, there is nothing to fear if we take shelter of Krishna. There's nothing that can daunt us. There's nothing that can give us any kind of fear. Why? Krishna says in the Bhagavatam, Apana Sangshritim Goram, those who are afflicted by the terrible goram. Goram is like the Sanskrit word for horror. So why is horror such a popular genre? Like gory. Goram, apana samshritim goram. Those who are afraid of the terrible situation of samsara. You know, if anyone's had nightmares, it's probably some kind of, weird, twisted impression from some past experience or some, of millions of lifetimes of all horrible experiences that you've gone through. So therefore there's a lot to be afraid of, because it's, you can suffer in ways that are almost unimaginable. And we can see human beings inflict suffering. I mean, not to get into gory details, but, you open the pages of history and you hear the tales of horrible atrocities performed from one upon human beings and others. So, what is the remedy for that? Krishna says, Yan nama vivasograhan, one who chants my name. Fear personified runs in fear. Swayam bhayam. Yad bibeti swayam bhayam. So that's a beautiful verse, first canto. Yad bibeti swayam bhayam. There's Swayam Bhagavan and there's Swayam Bhai. Swayam Bhagavan means the original personality of Godhead. Swayam Bhai means fear personified. So fear personified runs in fear from those who chant Krishna's name. Even unconsciously, even without relationship, everything becomes auspicious. What to speak of for devotees? Look at Prahlad Maharaj. Nothing could touch him. Nothing could harm him. Ambarish Maharaj, even though Durvasa, great sage, tried to kill him, he was protected. So really, the idea is that when we develop this Sambandha relationship, as much as our mood of relationship progresses with Krishna, with Guru, that much we can become fearless. And that's why at the end, Arjuna was ready to do anything. Even though it was a terrible thing, he was willing to face it, and he could overcome it because of his relation and understanding of Krishna's nature. So how do we develop relationship? I have to develop an understanding of Krishna's nature and position. That's why a lot of the Gita is dedicated to developing an understanding of the nature of the self, the nature of God, the nature of this world, and our relationship with them. So the whole second chapter, the first from 12 to 12 to 235, Sankhya Yoga, what is the nature of the self? And that's one level of becoming fearless, knowing that nothing can harm you. A person who thinks he has killed another is an illusion. The person who's there's neither slain nor slayer. So it's all the action of the material modes of nature. The soul cannot be touched by fire, water, or wind, anything. The soul is immortal. Soul is transcendental. How to be established in the nature of the self? Therefore, there are different paths: Gyan Yoga, Karma Yoga, Astanga Yoga, Hatha Yoga, but Bhakti Yoga is the best. And ultimately, Bhakti Yoga is the cream of the crop, and it's the true message of the Gita. The first 6 chapters, the last 6 chapters are like the treasure chest. Bhakti Yoga is the treasure inside. Middle 6 chapters, the lid and the base. Gyan Yoga, Karma Yoga. But Bhakti is the essence, and that's why even the early chapters and the later chapters, Bhakti is always present. In the Bhakti chapter, it's all Bhakti. But even if you look in the first chapters and the last chapters, Bhakti is present. Prominently present, especially the second chapter. Bhakti is prominently present. Krishna says, Neha bikramo nasasti pratyavyo navidite swalpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato vayat. The smallest performance of Bhakti Yoga frees you from the greatest fear. So that's how we can, if we develop an understanding of Krishna and a respect and a faith for Bhakti, chanting Kirtan, serving Thakurji, doing any pilgrimage, do any pranam, anything, then there's nothing to fear. And at that point, then even in the most dire circumstance, even in sickness, even in death, even in disease, even in problems, then all God is as far away as the syllables of his name. Oh, I had an accident. Oh, I had this, I had that. All I have to do is chant God's name. And Krishna's there. Yad bibheti swayam bhayam. And swayam bhai, fear personified, will run away. Means inside your heart there will be no fear. Then that weakness of heart will be given up. So all we have to do is a very simple process, because it's simple, people don't, give it enough respect, you could say. They would prefer if there's a secret mantra that you have to pay a lot for that nobody else knows. But the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is not secret, it's for everyone. It's on every sticker, everything we pass out, every book, every sticker, every packet of prasadam. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. Krishna, these two syllables, they are the most powerful thing. And so therefore the Gita is there to teach us faith in that. And the amazing thing is that faith, what is faith? Faith is also giving you entrance. So, you have to, Prabhupada would call this a science of self-realization. But in order to approach a subject matter and understand it, you must have some initial faith. Otherwise, if you're too doubtful, then everything just bounces right off. So a scientific method, you have to practice it. Scientific method is about practice. It's not just philosophy. So our process is a process of practice, therefore it's also called a science. But to approach the science properly, you must develop a little bit of faith. And you practice it with that mood of faith. Shraddha Shabda Vishwas Kore. Shraddha or faith is so important. So that faith deepens when we have proper understanding of Sastra. That becomes fixed faith, Paramartik Shraddha, not ordinary weak faith. So therefore studying is important. And the best way to study from Sadhu Guru Vaishnav, good. But we can also study from the books. Bhagavatam every morning, we're either reading Chitan Charitamrita or the Bhagavatam or the Gita or any other Sastra. The life of study. I know many people in India, every morning they recite the whole Gita by memory. They'll go to the Ganga back and forth, and in the meantime, the whole Gita will be recited. That's called relationship with Krishna. Krishna is Sastra. Sastra is manifestation of Krishna. So you learn these slokas and it's bringing Krishna into your heart. It's making him established there as an irrevocable fact. Nashta preshva badreshu nityam bhagavata seve. Bhagavat uttama shloki bhakti bhavati naishtaki. As an irrevocable fact. So just to conclude, there's so many things to talk about. Ultimately the idea is rising above mundane life, developing, the transcendental life in service and dedication and relationship. Like I said, Krishna ultimately is telling us a message of love. He says, I love you, basically. It's his message to us. But you need to, take off the layers of illusion and see reality in fact, not see your distorted version of reality. Understanding that everything is my potency, my nature, and therefore developing honor and respect for all beings. Jive samandhi jane Krishna adishtan, Mahaprabhu said. Honor all living entities, knowing that Krishna resides within them. So that's why I say, the divine in me offers pranam to the divine in you. Namaste. Understanding God is present everywhere. Therefore, how do we be fearless and honest? Jivana nirvahe ane udvega nadiba para upakar nija sukha pasadiva. While living our life, we should not commit pain or cause pain to any other. We should simply act for the welfare of all others, giving up sense of our own happiness. Nija sukha pasadiva. This is called righteous action in devotion. But Krishna ultimately says, Yad kurosi yadasnasi yad shahosi dasi yad tapasyati kunteya tat kuru svamarartam. Try to do everything for me, for my sake, under my direction. Then Krishna will teach us how to serve everyone. So we surrender to Krishna. And Krishna says, if you surrender to me, then I give you the intelligence to come to me. Tadhami buddhi yogam yena mam upayantite. I will give you that intelligence. But what should you do? Be focused. Ananyas chintan tamam yejana paripashte tesha nitya viptanam yoga shema vahamyam. Develop that relation to me, then you can be in relation to everyone. We try to be in relation to others, but not to God. So if you develop a relationship to Krishna, to God, then you can have a relation with everyone and have love for everyone. But you must put the one before the zero. Put Krishna first. Put the one first. Then everything else becomes more enhanced in its value. So we put Krishna first, and Krishna says, ultimately, man mana bhava mad bhakto man yaji mam namaskuru. Offer your heart to me, your mind to me. Develop this mood of being a devotee, devotion. Then You have nothing to fear. Sarva dharman prityajan mamekam sharanam braja ahangtang sarva papebhyo mokshayishami masucha. Do not doubt. He concludes with this again. Masucha. I am telling you, I am promising you. If you have any respect and faith in me, in Krishna, he says, I am promising you, I will deliver you. Give up all conception of material dharma adharma. Sarva dharman prityaja. Forsake it. Material dharma is what binds you to samsara. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Jada vidya maya jatara vaibhav jivana banaika gada. All the material knowledge in this world makes you a donkey. Jada vidya jata. Whatever knowledge there is in this world, of this world, turns you into a donkey in a fool's paradise. Therefore, give it up. Mamekam sharanam braja. And approach me directly. Then I will deliver you. Have no fear. Sarva pap. Oh, if you're afraid, if I give up dharma, I'll commit pap. Don't fear. Sarva dharma. He says, Moksha shami masucha. I will deliver you. It's from sarva pap. Everything. So this is the idea of nobility in service to God. And that's why, as a message, in this modern time, there's so much fear-based, you could say, hysteria. And that fear-based hysteria is leading towards endeavoring to limit people's, development of their relationship to God and community. Sadhu Sangha is so important. No, Sadhu Sangha is not possible. I know many countries where, you can get arrested for going to the grocery store without having a certain kind of new passport. And we're lucky, that's not the case yet. The point is that we don't need to, Kamsa, I don't want to get political, but Kamsa tried to control everyone to the last degree. Tried to be Ishvar, and that can't last. So ultimately, when systems try to completely control you to every minute degree, that's when God gave free will for a reason. Krishna says, independence, Swatantrata, is the greatest jewel I've given you. Learn how to use it properly. And so, it's an interesting topic anyhow, but like I was saying before about, in America, people came to this country, founded it, there's so many things around that, but whatever. The point is that their relationship to God was being dictated by the state. You can't worship in the home. Imagine if we couldn't do a house program. We couldn't do Kirtan in the house. Oh, that's our religious practice, so you're not allowed to do that. Many places are there in this world now where you will be imprisoned. I know people who lived in a country where if they found you didn't have meat in the fridge, they would imprison you because being vegetarian was illegal. And there's places where sannyasis, go to jail for, they have to dress in plain clothes and do programs in certain places in China. Many sannyasis I know have been there, but they've had like arrests and attacks. Why? You're not allowed to follow your religion to God. So our idea is, that was not the founding principle, and that's not the constitution under which we abide. Therefore, we should not give up, our freedoms lightly, because once you give it up, then we'll take something else, then we'll take something else, then we'll take something else. So, there's one thing is there to be, it's always right to be, you want to not cause harm to others, and all those things are there. But ultimately, you can't give up we don't want to give up our practice. I've heard from Vaishnavas that, a lot of what's going on, it's there to stop the performance of Krishna Kirtan. Krishna Kirtan should be stopped. Kali Maharaj likes to stop Krishna Kirtan. So, but it's also, there's always a blessing in, every curse has a blessing if you can see it the right way. So we also don't, Krishna, there's an interesting story. There was a sadhu crossing on a boat with many other people, and a storm started, and it was raining so much and the winds were so heavy the boat started to capsize. Water was filling up. Everyone started freaking out, screaming and trying to get the water out. And the sadhu, smiling, he was bringing water in. Everyone was, and they couldn't say anything to him. He's an old Baba. And there's one person, there's like 50 people taking water out. So it's like, let the Baba do whatever he's doing. He's bringing it in, we're taking it out, no problem. But they were like, what is this crazy person doing? The boat's we're all gonna sink and he's trying to help. And then, like 20 minutes later, anyhow, it started clearing up. The boat started approaching the shore. Then he started taking it out. So when they got off the boat, they asked him, Sadhu, what were you doing? He said, seemed to me like it was God's will, so I was trying to serve God's will. When it seemed like his desire changed, I was trying to serve that. He was detached. So ultimately, we're not interested in, Chanakya Pandit said, politician, always stay, like a horned animal with horns and a politician. Be careful, avoid. Don't sit too close. And in India, they say sadhu. Stay at least 100 or 1,000 feet away from a sadhu. Because what happens when you approach sadhu, takes your life to God. So immature life is destroyed. So in India, they say like that. Oh, sadhu, 1,000 feet, 100 feet, stay away. Very dangerous to meet a real sadhu. Very dangerous. Don't go to Keshigat. Don't go to the sadhu. But so basically, we are not, unless we're omniscient, we don't know everything, so, we shouldn't make too grand statements about things in this world. We should be, fools rush in where angels fear to tread. So we're not trying to be activists or start political movements, but we also don't want to, give up our right to have, service and devotion to God and relation with God. And because once that's given up, then, it starts small. They say, how do you boil a frog? Everyone heard this one? You put a frog in hot water, it jumps out. Put it in cold water and heat it up. Oh, nice bath. Warm. Oh, nice. And then once, if you put your foot in hot water, you pull it out. But if it's in warm water, you gradually heat it up. Oh, it's very nice. So you put someone, it's very secure, safe. We're just protecting you. Nice and warm. And then heat it up, heat it up, heat it up, heat it up. Ultimately, they don't want to kill. They just want to control. And ultimately, control means it's the tendency of the demonic class to control. And the demonic class has no faith in God, or if they understand that God exists, they have enmity towards God. They're either atheists or they're envious. They say the most terrible crimes have been performed by those who were trying to exact vengeance upon God. Because of whatever, they weren't happy for something, and so they were trying to show their ultimate attack against reality by causing the most pain to others as possible. So it's either an action out of enmity or atheism, but the freedom to perform your religion, to serve God, to worship God, is something at the bedrock of our civilization. And so that should not be easily given up. So therefore we should also be fearless. And if we're serving in grace and honest to God, there is nothing to fear. That's the message ultimately. There is nothing to fear in honest service to God. If you don't do anything wrong, you have nothing to fear. Everything can come, You can have the greatest, look at stories in our history of people who were attacked and vilified, but they were righteous. They have nothing to fear. So ultimately, we have nothing to fear. Take shelter of Krishna, there's nothing to fear. And even if this life is given up, there's that life waiting for us. So there's nothing to fear. So, any questions, any comments? I know this is just a little one theme. There's so many themes in the Gita. There's so much. It's just touching upon one little part. But, it begins like that and ends with that. The beginning of the Gita, Krishna says, give up your weakness. Give up impotence. In the end, he says, give up everything without fear. Come to me. So, I'm not, I'm trying to just remember Krishna with Gita. This is a separate subject matter, but, it's something that is, affecting a lot of people everywhere. And so it's not something to be, skirted around, but, we should be able to do Kirtan programs, There's many places where it's not possible. I know in, many of my friends in California, for a whole year, no programs. No programs. So that's Krishna Kirtan, Kirtaniya Sarahari. Program should go on. So, Haribol. Thunderbolt. Svanchakaupadrupasya kripa sindhuvev cha pitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Gopanandi Mahaprasad ki jai. Jai Jai Shri Radhe Shyam.